what's the percent of people you should have that want to follow you? And I go, 100%. I'm a leader. People should follow me. And he's going, nah, it should be 51%. He said, you should always be challenging those people that don't want you to be their leader.
There will always be somebody stronger, faster, and smarter than you. Surviving depends on your adaptability to change. Those who are the most adaptable are dialed in. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Dialed In. This morning, I am joined by Tim Marshall. He is the Chief Innovation Officer for Dallas County Community College District, literally made up of 7 different colleges now being unified under a single accreditation. Tim led the innovation for being the first college in America to fully adopt blockchain for all of their 1.7 million student records. Quite an amazing feat. And also previously served in the military and used the very first iteration of internet, DARPANET. So from there to here, Tim, good morning. Are you ready to get dialed in?
Sure, let's go.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So let's talk about what you are the most passionate about, the thing that you are the most dialed into. What is that?
It probably is, because I picked the education sector. I'm dialed into that, allowing somebody to have the same experience that I had. I was a late college student. I went to 10 years of night school and met some barriers along the way that I watched friends and family that met the same barriers drop out. And, at the end of that journey, my life drastically changed. Salary almost doubled. I moved around the country. I found out that, the education I was provided gave me a great baseline and allowed me to have some confidence. And, I was a factory floor guy moving acid around. And, it was a completely different change of life and radically different in a way that I feel now that it's near the end of my career, it's time to give back to the same type of people that I was, and that was, somebody sometimes below or at the poverty level. Their education choices are restricted. They're not going to get into UT Austin, or they're not going to get selected for a private institution. So the community colleges are the area that I'm going to focus on until I decide to put the keyboard away.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, very honorable. I mean, colleges right now, I can only imagine, not, you think of colleges, some colleges have gotten online, but for you guys, I think the stat was at least one, at least 40% of students took one online course, right? Was that accurate?
And that's accurate. Yeah.
So when all this coronavirus stuff happened, obviously stay at home, you can't go to school. So you had to get everybody 100% online within 2 weeks. Tell me about that challenge.
So it was not one that I wanted for myself or for our district. We realized that because of the stay at home in Dallas, which was very restrictive, not only did our students have to stay at home, also our faculty. And we had a large number of faculty, 400 or 500, that had never taught online out of the 1,000 faculty that we had. So not only was our student population not really prepared, our faculty wasn't prepared. So we had 2 major pieces that we had to solve, and one was conditioning our systems to allow for that type of increase. So we had 60,000 students we had to add to our learning management system that were not there. We had hundreds of faculty and thousands of sections that were not in the learning management system. So a lot of that was innovative programming between 2 really systems that don't talk, our student system and our learning system, and brute force. I mean, we called a lot of people that were at home and no longer in the office to do things. We asked them to start doing brute force registration of moving students from on face-to-face to online instruction. And people go, well, that doesn't sound like it's hard. Well, there's a lot of federal money tied up into student loans, student grants, and they track the type of courses that a student takes. So there's different packaging allowed for online students, and we had to do all of that in 2 weeks. So it was an interesting training issue for our faculty. It was also an interesting training issue for the staff that had to deal with students that were moving. So, like I said, combination of innovative programming and people working 18 hours. And then we were actually overlaying shifts because some of our systems couldn't be on 24/7. They're a little bit old. They need to be taken down to be backed up. But every minute that they were up, we had somebody in those systems making changes. And it required a different communication approach and a different management approach. We became benevolent dictators really fast. There were, we created specific rapid response management teams that you could not question their authority. Higher ed is a lot like some corporate structures where some problems are, spread out and given time to manage. We didn't have that luxury here. We had a 2-week window where we had to get this thing done. So it was an interesting dynamic for some people that were used to just going off in a corner and doing their own thing.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. And what was more challenging? And give us some more details. The technology side of things, standing up the technology, or the behavior side of things, the training to that technology, right?
Yeah, it was definitely the second. The technology was in place. So we already had learning management systems. We just had to scale them. And there's algorithms and there's ways to do that, and they're accepted. The biggest issue was sometimes convincing people that this was going to be much longer than a 3 or 4 week solution. So we had to say, okay, first until the end of the semester, which is right about now, May, but that was 2 months ago when we were saying we're going to do this until May. And then about 2 weeks in, we said, okay, the entire summer is going to be this way. And so the faculty and staff that were uncomfortable with this couldn't hide anymore. This was us telling them this is what your job looks like for the next 3 to 6 months and maybe longer. So the behavioral adjustments were um, rather, I would say, harsh. But you're dealing with a pandemic, which we our emergency preparedness did not cover this type of activity.
Right, right.
So yeah, so we were talking with faculty leaders all the time, saying how can we manage this solution? Tell us the best way. And they go, just mandate it. If you just tell us there's no conversation with regards to what you're asking us to do, that this is a and we went, okay, that sounds good. We're just going to say these are the 10 steps. If you don't take them, you're not teaching a course. And and we set up um, instructional designers, which are like trainers of faculty. uh, we set them up on a 12-hour shift, so they would every half hour speak with a new faculty member and try to introduce them into the online world of teaching and learning. And they're still going through that. So even though we carried off what we set off to carry off, which is successfully ending this semester, we still have faculty that are new to this environment because sometimes your faculty changes as you move from spring to summer to fall. You get new faculty in, they have to go through the same process. They weren't expecting to do this summer. So our staff and our faculty they're stepping up, but it wasn't smooth.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the largest part of IT's job, which seems to get like under the radar more often than not, is training to the behavior of using the tech. Like we all get sucked into the flashing lights of like how cool the tech is, and like, all of us in tech, we all appreciate that aspect of it. But the harder part, the harder aspect is the training and the behavior and the adoption. Those are always the things that people challenge with the most, I think.
Yeah,
Is that fair to say?
definitely. We have our blinders on. If you've worked in technology for more than 5 to 10 years, you're so used to it that you think everybody's used to it. So, it was funny some of the discussions I had where, here I'm working daily with maybe 20 critical pieces of technology that impact our organization, from applications to hardware to, just this type of platform. And our faculty and our staff sometimes are never challenged beyond 2 or 3 different applications. So, a registrar works with a student system. They collect checks from the students, and they put people in classes. We have a payroll group that just does what payroll does everywhere else. They work in the same system. And now you're saying, okay, I need you to go do this with this computer. This requires a tablet. You do this on your phone, and they are just really challenged. And believe me, it took the blinders off of me. It wasn't a question of do they have the capacity to learn? It was the question that they never were challenged with this many technology components at once. And again, we're comfortable. We just say, okay, just give me the next thing I have to do. But people that have a very specific job function, that comfort level is not that deep, and we have to recognize it. We have to address it, and we have to put that into the training. It's not just go into this application and go to this screen. You have to give the reasons why, and that's the part of the training that a lot of the technical writers and the product producers miss out on. That whole, how do you wrap your business around your entire business, sometimes around training for just a very specific technology? They need to see the reasons why.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. So, and as a chief innovation officer, I like that little twist to it. As a chief innovation officer, your faculty doubled overnight. So how big is the faculty now?
It's the faculty. They doubled overnight in terms of those that use the systems. So we still brought on a few more faculty to take the load, but the people that are our customers doubled. So even though they were there before, we went from about 1,000 to 1,900 faculty, but our staff that we support now is over 7,000. So it's more than just our faculty; it's our staff. And my IT staff kind of doubled overnight because um, I think in the introduction you mentioned we were 7 separate colleges. We're becoming one. Each one of those colleges had their own independently run IT staff. And we realized rather quickly that if we were going to do and manage through this pandemic crisis, that doing things 7 different ways wasn't going to work. Some of our students travel between the campuses. And so we unified our IT structure, and I went from 160 staff to over 320 overnight, which had its own management challenges.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So what was the hardest part of this? 40% to 100%, and you did it in under 2 weeks.
Hmm.
So because you had no choice. So what if you're looking back now? I know you're not completely out of the woods, but most of the hard work is there.
Hmm.
What was the hardest part, or who were the people that were the key players to this?
So, the key players are people you don't even expect. So, the key players were a number of staff that were comfortable working with smaller groups of faculty, and now we were challenging them to come up with a process where they could do that training for a large group of faculty. I mean, the size of our faculty that we train, or just think about a college of maybe 20,000 students, taking all the faculty from a college that big into a training program immediately. So I couldn't have designed it. I'm not, I didn't have time. My time was pulled in other areas, and I had to leave it up to other people to design it and carry it out. And so there's a level of trust that you have. That was probably at the time going into it our largest, what we thought, barrier. So so we we satisfied that barrier, and we pushed through it. On the flip side, it's Monday morning quarterbacking here on a Wednesday or Tuesday, excuse me. The days get lost in this room.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say that we did not recognize some of the true poverty-stricken areas of Dallas where there is a digital divide that is so wide and deep. It's very different for us to contemplate. So a lot of our students in community college, they come and they spend all day at the campus, even if they're only taking 2 or 3 classes, because we have other amenities there. We've got really good Wi-Fi, and if they don't have a computer, then we got lots of computer labs. If you shelter them at home, though, that all goes away. So that's now our biggest issue is dealing with a student population that cannot attend online. They just don't have the devices and they don't have the connectivity, and that's still, we'll keep our enrollments, but it will be difficult to see enrollment increases like we have over the last 10 years, because that population is disenfranchised, and it's hard to imagine how we can serve them without some sort of government intervention or some big foundation that's willing to take on that load of our students.
And so far there hasn't really been anyone stepping up to that challenge yet.
No, I'm meeting with a group. In fact, our first meeting's tomorrow with a group of nonprofit CIOs in the Dallas area. We're going to craft what we think are multiple options for either a charity or our legislature or even the federal government to address this. Okay, if you're going to build a building and house 200 families in it, you're putting power in, and you're putting in sewer and public water. You need to put in fiber at the same time, and you need to connect it just like you do utilities, and it's got to be just that cheap for that part of the population that we serve daily to give them an opportunity to lift themselves out of that situation. And if you just give them a place to live and don't think about the other amenities, then you're just society will continue to be saddled by this poverty problem. So, it's things I never thought I'd get into discussions with, going through graduate school and undergraduate school and a technology degree programs. And now I'm sunk into this, and it's eye opening, and it begs for a solution. And if you're good at making solutions, then this is where you should be working.
Oh, absolutely. So let's perfect segue into providing an invisible technology experience. Something that came up during our pre-interview. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a barrier when you notice it. So, and I've got kids, and they don't have some of the tools that I have, and I don't think it's a barrier. And then all of a sudden, I'm talking with them, and to me, headset, cell phone, nice large screen television, it's to me, it's invisible. I walk around knowing that I always have it, and so we have to provide that same comfort of technology. I mean, some of there are some generational gaps, but they're it's in how they perceive technology. And the best way to put it is, when I got my first car, my dad, all he wanted to do was show me how to uh, adjust the carburetor and change the brakes, and all I wanted to do was drive the damn thing. So so that's how technology is today with the people that are coming up to it. They've always had it. They don't need to know how it works, and it's invisible to them. Like a car was invisible to me. I always figured a car would be there, but to him, he remembered what it was like prior to having the access to a car. So this invisible piece is, we have to make the technology that we are wanting to provide so ubiquitous, so invisible, that people just adopt it without thinking that, oh, I've got to learn a technology. So I remember giving my mom a cell phone, and it was like years. I mean years before she could just even make calls. So it was not a mental capacity issue. It was just like, okay, I don't want to spend time with this. It's too hard. That's the area we have to get into. The K through 12 environment is very good in that area. They give students access to technology very early. But our adult population that didn't have that benefit, if they went to grade school or a high school just 10 years ago, they did not have the benefit of learning with these tools all the time. And then right now, when those students are graduating high school, I feel elated and then sad at the same time. Elated that we're getting a new push into the workforce with people that are hungry to do the work. At the same time, if they came from a situation where they were given technology, now they have to provide it for themselves. And that sticker shock, if they were given a laptop or a Chromebook for 4 years, and now they've got to go drop $1,000 or $250 on the same type of device, they don't have that capacity. And you've just, you just, you remove the invisible part of it. It became visible real fast.
Right, right, and then it becomes painful.
Hmm.
If you don't know, now you have to learn, and that's somewhat a painful process, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the next topic here: risk aversion versus innovation. And to start that off, let's delve into the main topic here, blockchain, right? So
Hmm.
what is DCCCD doing with blockchain that no one else really did fully, right? They didn't fully
Yeah.
adopt it the way you guys did. Let's talk about that story and why.
Well, the story why it started three years ago now. I don't know if anybody remembers ITT Tech. It was a private college. It was a for-profit college. They taught technology, and they went bankrupt and closed their doors like immediately in the middle of a semester. And the Department of Ed called up our chancellor because we have a large presence in Dallas, and they said there's 4,000 students in Dallas, give or take, that need a place to go to finish their education, and we took them in. The problem was, since ITT Tech shut down, they had all the student records, and the student didn't own any of their records. So if you've ever had to get your official transcript, you have to go to a college or university and say, here's $15, give me my official transcript. Well, ITT Tech had no official transcripts. They had students that were ready to graduate within 1 or 2 courses, and we had to treat them as if they had never gone to school. So our chancellor said, we've got to make sure this doesn't happen to us if something happens to us, that we've got a lot of students. If we get hit by a tornado and our data center goes down, we've got to find a way to get those students their official records. So at the time, blockchain was primarily a financial, Bitcoin support or structure. A couple of college and universities were talking about putting digital credentials up, and that meant when you graduate, we'll put a PDF of your degree up in the blockchain. And there was a group, Stanford, MIT, I think University of Texas might have been in there. There was like 7, Arizona State. There were about 7 universities talking about this, and the chancellor and I were going, well, if they're talking about it, let's take a look at it. We looked into it, and um, it was a challenge where I did not have the staff that we could have immediately taken on that project because none of my staff knew blockchain. And so we can either go train them, bring them back in 6 months, and we'll start this up, or we can look for a company that can do this for us. And our chancellor had a friend that had just had his business was just bought out by Follett or Barnes and Noble or one of the bookstores, and he was looking for the next challenge. And we co-developed, as he was bringing up his company, we co-developed a blockchain. We were going to just do the certificates first, and then I got in the middle of it, and I looked at the structure, and I said, what's keeping us from doing our entire student record? So the student records are pretty complex. It's not just the courses that they take, but it's the degrees they're planning to take. It's the transfers. It's the financial aid requirements. But we had already gotten through the complex technical piece, and I said we need to move as many of these up. I mean, our pilot called for 10,000 records of our most recent 2 or 3 years graduating class, and I said that's artificial. Why are we and then the response came back, well, this is a pilot. I go, but what makes it a pilot? We have no drop dead date. There's nobody demanding this. We can scale through a pilot rather quickly without anybody even knowing it. So and that's the risk aversion piece. I had campus data record owners that were really against this because they could not see themselves in the solution, because I was saying, okay, no longer are we going to ask a student to contact you for their official transcripts. They're just going to pull it off the blockchain, and they won't have to. We're not going to charge them, and they'll have access to that student record even if we go away because it's out there in the chain. And then our biggest next question was, why are we doing this just for us? And we started talking to our friends in the local education community, and we convinced the University of North Texas Dallas to come in, and the Dallas Independent School District to come in as co-development partners. But they kind of waited on the side to see how it would go. And when we announced 1.7 million records, and that's actually up to 1.8 million because we've had another year worth of student records added to it because new students coming in all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we are now transferring official transcripts with hundreds, if not a little bit over 1,000 other institutions, so our students can transfer. And I was real proud the other day when I looked at the report and I found out that about 200 of our students are transferring to Arizona State, one of the schools that are still talking about doing this. And I just kind of smiled and went, yeah, we're doing it. And they're accepting it, and they're not even knowing that they're accepting it because the official transcript comes through to them as it would through any other transcript distribution method that the schools and universities use.
And it
So,
does that without intervention from you guys.
right? Yeah, we just we do a daily feed into the chain, and the students are notified on our website if you need access to your electronic records. Here's where you go, and it's on our development partner's website. But if they fail, then there's still a hyperledger chain out there that I can take to any other vendor, or we're talking about bringing that ability to do blockchain in house, because now through the process of co-developing, my staff kind of learned about how to set up a chain server. So we're not quite ready yet. I was kind of thinking this would be the summer to do it, but
Yeah.
other things happen this
Other
summer.
things happen. So,
Yeah,
how does it work? Back to making tech invisible and invisible experience. So,
yeah,
I assume the student goes onto their website portal. They're already credentialed in somehow,
yeah,
and then they click on a request transcript button, and do they get it like pretty much instantly, or?
yeah, yeah. So it's in the chain. The neat thing about it is, if a student had gone to those other two development partners, they can build their own transcript off of multiple education institutions. Um, they can say to a vendor, or I mean, they can say to an employer, "Hey, guess what? Here's the three classes I took that match your job. I don't need to give you everything on my official transcript. If you're not demanding that I have a degree, but you just need to see these three classes, I can give them to you." So they have a lot of options, and just as you described it, it's our website that talks about transcripts and access to your record points to theirs. Theirs will, we have we're working on single sign-on, but right now we give them an enrollment key, and it's a used once key access. If they lose it, they can come back and get re-verified. But it's a lot quicker than trying to get a transcript. And the nice part about it is, as you may know or not know, that employers sometimes require you to have a transcript proving that you took courses that you say you took. And sometimes, if your job has a degree requirement, you'll definitely need an official transcript.
And
Our student
they typically need that pretty quickly, right?
Very quick, yeah. So
And anyone who's watching right now, like if you've ever gotten a transcript, I remember I went to Arizona State, so getting my
yeah,
transcript from them was like 20 or $30, and I had to wait like a week or two
yep,
to
yep,
get that transcript. Like it's
yeah,
not a thing that you just get right now.
no.
That's unheard of.
And our biggest complaints were when we closed over the winter. Our entire operation shuts down for uh, winter break. So it's like a 2 week period, 10 days to 2 weeks, depending on how the calendar falls, where we don't answer phones and there's nobody at our college. And people were saying they were missing out job opportunities because they could not get a transcript. And when they came back, like you said, it was now another 2 week wait to get that transcript. So it was like in some cases, right? It would be a 4 to 5 week wait. And now we're not even, the middleman's cut out. The official transcript is on the chain. If somebody tries to download that transcript and make a change to it, when the person goes to verify it, they're going to see that it's not the same article that's in the chain. So we built all those safeguards in. Our first attempt was going to be just making an unofficial transcript, but then we realized too many places are asking for the official, and we went through that vetting piece of it, that we're a receiving organization that gets it, they can click on a link and prove that that is the same record that came out of the chain. So I'm really proud of it, and
So it's actually better than a transcript now,
yeah, 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 yeah.
because now there's no manipulation of it. Like
Nope.
that is the data is the data.
Yep. And any change becomes integrated to the yeah. So
And
it was interesting. Yeah, it
yeah,
made me feel young again. So
yeah, to understand how that works, you'd have to understand. Again, this is going back to like you just want to drive the car and you don't want to fix the
mhm,
carburetor. But if you truly understand blockchain, you'd understand how this actually works, and that's the driving mechanism behind it. Is just the force authentication of like is the data matching the data that we have here, right? And is it
yep.
unchanged? Yep.
So
Uh,
yeah, that I read
Brilliant.
a book. Yeah, I decided to read up on it before I got too deep into it. And the book stressed that this was basically for um, you know stop thinking about Bitcoin. This is a different protocol, and they nicknamed it the Trust Protocol. And it very yeah, I mean that just rang true. It was like, yeah, this is wherever this record goes. It was originally vetted by an organization that you cannot remove that watermark. You cannot remove that trust, even if that organization somehow slips off the edge of the flat Earth.
Yeah, and question from the audience from Todd. What other data applications do you see for blockchain? Maybe within your organization, like what else could you guys do next, or what else? What other examples could you think of that you would use for blockchain?
Um, the one I've been thinking of, because we're getting ready to do distribution of all learning materials to the student as part of their tuition. And it would be how some organizations are using blockchain to track commodity distribution. So, like Walmart and, some of the other large retailers, Amazon, they're using blockchain to follow certain delivery patterns of materials that may come from all over the world. They need to have a single platform for tracking those commodity shipments. Something that gets into a truck in China, goes to a ship, travels around the world, comes off the truck. I mean, comes off the ship into another truck. There's blockchain is really good for that type of tracking, where traditionally those shipping systems had to talk to one another and they were different for each organization. So student materials kind of similar. Some are textbooks, some are websites, some are codes that get you into an application. Our challenges right now is we're dealing with hundreds of publishers. We're dealing with lots of different sources for our materials, and our purchasing office gets overloaded sometimes with regards to tracking each individual purchase request. And if it's this vendor, it's a blanket order. If it's this vendor, it's a bid. And it's like, we've got to find a better way. And right now blockchain looks like that if we can mimic what other large organizations are doing, that might be the next opportunity. So
Awesome, excellent. Thanks for that response.
mhm.
So going back to risk aversion, being prepared for dangerous situations. You once ran or participated in labs, so
Yeah.
chemicals, dangerous situations that could arise, and you've actually found yourself in some of these situations where you had to go in not knowing what the outcome was going to be, like for your life, right?
Mhm.
Um, can you talk about that story a little bit and lead that into how that's prepared you to be a better CIO? You have 15 people that you mentor. Lead us into that.
So yeah, you mentioned my first real job back when was working at a plant that um, we made computer chips for radars for defense systems. And but my job was not elegant. My job was moving acid from a storehouse to into the lab area, and making sure that the lab, the acids got there on time, got stored in the right protection areas. And um, it was pretty mundane, but for me it paid great. It was better than minimum wage. Um, but what we found out is our insurance company for the plant basically stated that because of the nature of the materials that we were moving, they were highly hazardous. We're talking sulfuric acid, trichloroethylene, acetones, solvents, degreasers, you name it. It was very dangerous stuff that the local fire department did not have a hazardous materials disposal or training or reaction unit, because it was in a suburb. And we were going to be closed down because we could not get insurance. The one option we had was to train staff internally and to become firefighters and hazardous materials responders as part of their job. And I volunteered because it was another 50 cents an hour. And you're young, and it was sexy to be a firefighter. So I went through the firefighter training during work hours. So I think this is great. I'm not even asked to do this at night or anything. So 3:30 in the afternoon, I'd get off of my shift and go do 4 hours of firefighting training, and got my hazardous materials disposal certificate. And that's when I really started to learn about what the hell I was moving around and how dangerous it was. And kind of scary, but they outfitted us with the protection suits, the breathing apparatuses, the detection materials, where we would walk into a lab knowing that we had a spill or a gas leak, not knowing what it was. That was part of my job, was to break open these little ampules and watch the reactions to see what kind of leak we were having. Because some of the leaks, I couldn't take my mask off to see if it was smelled like sulfuric acid, because if it was, I was going to drop dead. Um, and it was all a fun experience until that alarm went off the first time, where there was a leak and the first leak was it's a little hazy now. I got two major incidences but the leak was gas in nature, and we knew exactly where in the plant it was based upon the claxons. But I really recognized at that point what training can do, because everything in my brain was telling me not to run in that direction because everybody else was running away. But I was trained, I had the equipment, and I had faith in the people that I was running into that group, into that area with, that as long as they did their job, I would be safe. And they had that same feeling about me. As long as I did my job, I'd keep them safe. And we got through the incident. It was a gas leak. We one gentleman was pretty severely compromised from the. We had to pull him out. And then another, we had an acid spill later on that I was actually in the middle of the lab when it happened, and I had to react without the gear, but the training still kicked in. But what that does is, through that activity, I recognized, that we have to carry those types of mindsets into all of our work. And it was humbling in that not many people get the opportunity to learn like that. I mentioned the military has a structure like this, and the first responders do. And I think that's kind of sad that we can't spread that type of training around. But it also prepares people for decision making when there is risk involved, and allows me to accept risk, knowing that if I have the right people around me with the right training, I can accept maybe a higher level of risk than other people would or would not. And unfortunately, to me, it came through experience. And I never saw myself as a leader until after those experiences, when actually other people said, you not only performed your responsibility, but immediately as yours was finished, you were moving on to other responsibilities. And I go, I thought that's just what we were supposed to do. And they were going, no, that's, even though you had the training and everybody else had the training, you were one of the 2 out of the 10 that were just rotating, and you did it naturally. And I go, well, and they go, that's where leaders come from. And I go, okay, I don't want to be a leader. I want to just get my money. I just want to, I just want to go to the crab cook off at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, but it's that, you know, being a leader, it, it's dealing with risk. It's not a comfortable position, and it shouldn't be. And if it is, if you're so comfortable in your leadership role, then you're probably not leading. That's all I can say, because there's times where you have to span into another focus of that's outside your subject matter expertise. And when you do that, you have to be confident in your ability to jump into that arena, and you also have to be confident in the other people that either support you or are peers or are former leaders, and you can learn from them, because that way you'll get there quicker. But without risk, you'll never know that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent stories, Tim. Anything before we start to wrap up here? Anything that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
No, I don't know. It's too early in the morning.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, cool. Cool. So as we're starting to wrap up here, got a few more questions for you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah.
Uh, what is the best career advice you've ever received?
Um. Yeah. It's funny. You look back and you get these opportunities to look back, and the best career advice I've ever received probably came 2 times. The first time was with my first supervisor, who convinced me that I needed to go to school. I had worked at that job for like 5 years, and my supervisor, interestingly enough, I always thought he was like the greatest leader, but I realized after he passed that he never got past that first level supervisor. So he was in charge of about 70 technicians in the shop floor. And one day, he calls me into his office after I'd made a mistake in one of our production flows, and it was a serious mistake. And when he called me, and I thought I lost my job, and he goes, "You're the most valuable person that I have now working for me." And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, you'll never make that mistake again. He says, and you're smart enough to learn from it that I'll know you'll leave this room and tell everybody, don't try to shorten the production line anymore like you just did. And he said, but the issue with you is all the 70 people that you were hired in with are all doing something more than they did the day they walked in the door, except for you. You're still doing the same job. Yeah, you're doing this hazmat thing on the side, but you're still doing the same job. And that's not, he says, you have to challenge yourself to do something different. And I'm going to send you to school. And so it was like, okay, that's great. I flunked out of university when I was 18 and never thought I was going to go back because it was a miserable, I mean, it wasn't even close. I had like a 0.8 grade point average and I partied my way all the way out. And he said, we have this thing at the plant where it's the Westinghouse Applied Sciences School, and you don't have to go to college. You can just take some courses, when you get off of work. He says, but you're not going anywhere. After work, you're going to do this. So it was not like advice. It was like a demand, and it was a demand I couldn't. He just saved my job, so I couldn't give it up. And at the end of those 9 weeks, that I sat through the fundamentals of radar course, and it was real interesting. I saw what I was making was going where it was going, and I got this little certificate that said you now receive 3 continuing education credits at the Anne Arundel Community College. And I thought, wow, I just got college. I just got college credit. And I never knew I could do that. So the advice was really simple, but it was life changing. And that started me on when I finished the 6 courses that I could take there. I went back to Roland and I said, what's this Anne Arundel Community College all about? Because I didn't even know about the community college that was in my own community. I went away to go to University of Maryland, and then I came back home, and I didn't care what other colleges were around. And so that advice was really specific and to the point. The second one was after I'd already been a CIO, after I had already figured that I've had a really I'm in the middle of my really good career, and I was at a conference, a certificate for CIOs conference, and I was talking with a gentleman that I had known, and I had actually consulted at his university when I was a consultant, and we were talking about good leaders, and I thought I was one, and he said, his leadership trait that he valued the most, and that all should, is that you make people uncomfortable. He said, good leaders, he goes, Tim, what's the percent of people you should have that want to follow you? And I go, 100%, I'm a leader. People should follow me. And he's going, nah, it should be 51%. He said, you should always be challenging those people that don't want you to be their leader. That's where leadership is. So the people that you can make uncomfortable in your role, as long as they have a goal or they can see your vision, those people will become additive, supplemental to the people you lead as they bring themselves from a feeling uncomfortable to feeling comfortable. So, you change your own behavior to make yourself comfortable. You don't change others' behavior. So that was truly, that when I got that, I stopped thinking of myself first as a technology leader. I started thinking of myself as a leader. I can engage in conversations that will make me uncomfortable because that's how I'll grow, and I can engage in conversations that make others uncomfortable because that's how they'll grow. And the blockchain was a perfect example of that. I walked into my staff meeting with about 30 people that were going to be involved in the project, and I said, "This is where we're going. We're going to abandon a couple other projects, and I expect you to co-develop with the company." And they just really did not like that idea at all. They all thought that they could do whatever they needed to do without any help. I had come from an outsourcing background, so I'm saying we're sourcing some of this development. And I was told that I was going to damage the institution. Our reputation was going to go down. I'm going, well, nobody's going to hear about it if we fail. We're going to do this and make sure that it doesn't fail. And if we can't get it to work, it's just going to be set aside. Nobody's going to know. But that act of making not only my staff comfortable, but also the record keepers, the finance group, the registrars, making them comfortable had to occur over time, and they had to buy into it. So that's my advice: make people uncomfortable.
Nobody's going to know about it if you fail. Boom, like that, that right there. So it's so true. There's so much
Well,
truth.
for that project, nobody was going to know because
Right.
we didn't announce it.
But you could take that and spread that across any other discipline in life.
Yeah.
Like no one's gonna know if you fail. I mean, yeah, that's yeah, that's awesome. That's powerful. Um, what's the biggest area related to your role that you are curious about right now, and why? Basically, what are the things you're researching now the most?
Oh wow, look out. So I engaged in a doctoral program, and I'm all but dissertation right now. And right now, I'm arguing with the school because they don't like my topic, but I'm going with it anyway. So this is if you live in Dallas or if you live in a metropolitan area, a lot of people that go to school, they mention two things that are issues with them is they don't have enough time to do what they want to do, to go to school if they're an adult student, which means I got to do it either online or I got to go to a class when I'm after I've worked. And so they say I don't have the time. And also, even if I had the time, I don't know how to manage my time. So the nice thing about these devices is there's embedded intelligence in them with regards to your patterns of of your life. It tracks where you go. It tracks what applications you use when you're at work, when you're not. And my idea is to build a platform, an artificial intelligence platform that's already there, and marry it to a learning management system platform that's already there to let this thing know when I'm ready to learn. And when I'm ready to learn, if it's only 20 minutes or if it's 2 hours, it can condition my learning materials such that I can, it knows that I'm free for the next 20 minutes. It'll give me a 15-minute piece of a lecture or an assignment that can satisfy my instructor, or I can start building and stacking those credentials so that my time is being managed for me. And then the one real big piece, which really is getting the part that's stopping it is, and I hate to give away this stuff, but I'm going to give it away. It's a small audience. Is when you're living in a metropolitan area, I'm spending when I'm allowed to go to work an hour each way to work. So I'm in my car and it's taking me an hour to get to work and an hour to get back. Well, as driverless cars become more common, as that technology becomes trusted, then I can sit in my car like other people do in New York City. They sit on the trains, or people in San Jose that sit in buses that have full Wi-Fi, and then let this thing teach me. And but it's got to be packaged. It's got to be wrapped around by a university that's going to accredit it, and it's got to be flushed out and tested. But that's where I'm at. So the goatee is white, the head is bald, the body's breaking down, but I've got ideas that are exciting me. That I've got educators that are telling me that's too far out. I'm going no. The driverless cars are quicker than you think they are, and maybe I don't need the car. Maybe I'm just sitting at home doing something.
Well, they also said the same thing about student records on blockchain. So
Yeah, they're the same thing. I'm tired of hearing about it. So so I got to the doctorate. I passed all my classes. I've 4.0. I don't take nothing less, and I'm all but dissertation, which means I got to write this. Well, the education dissertations, you have to have at least 100 sources of people that have done previous study in this environment, and there's not. So that's what's stopping me. So I'm going to write the book, and I'm going to be somebody else's reference material for their doctorate. And if I get the sheepskin or not, I don't care right now. Because it's important to me that this project have no artificial barriers to keeping it from being explored. So right now, I kind of I said, I'm going on sabbatical. I'm not going to talk about this for about 6 months to a year until the committee recognizes it. And now I'm saying, no, I've got vendors ready to look at this. I've got um, a background that is recognizable, that I'm willing to take on risk and I'm willing to do something different that the vendor community can see. And if great, somebody will give me the sheepskin as an honor as opposed to me having to earn it, but I don't care anymore.
nice, pulling all the stops. I
Yeah.
love that. Love that. Um, uh, what's the best business book of all time in your opinion? I know there's a lot of them, but just from what you've read, What's
Yeah.
the best one?
It's 20 years old now. It's the world is flat. That changed the mindset of a lot of people with regards to um, who my products are for, what my consumers can be. It came about at a time where I was in the middle of working for an outsourcing consulting firm, and it really changed my mind. In that, when I worked in the factory, the people I trusted were all in that factory, and maybe somebody from Pittsburgh would come by once in a while. And then when I was consulting and in charge of managed services, I had staff in India, Australia, um, London, and all across the states. And it seems like it's normal now, but when it came out, people were really critical of that type of work environment. And so when I go back and I think about the book, was it just the model they were bringing? It really wasn't the model they were bringing. It was a behavior they were trying to change. So any book that you pick up and it challenges your behavior, that's the most important book. So it's my reading tends to fall away from business books and more to technology lately, because I'm looking for that next solution to some problems that I have. But from a mindset perspective, even if it's 20 years old, it really shows you how to approach an issue that you have no knowledge about and start breaking down those barriers. It's a barrier busting book because it took on a very large um, conventional wisdom type of grow your market small, local, regional, state, national, worldwide. And then, you see somebody like Bezos who goes worldwide and then starts, okay, then I'll buy this and that and this and that. And then it becomes local. So I don't know if he mentions that book or not, but, it's a perfect example of that book coming out at a time when that type of activity was needed.
Excellent. The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Got it. Got it. And cool. What's the biggest failure you had in the last year, and why do you think it happened?
In the last year, our biggest failure was we wanted to move our all of our student materials into what we call an included environment, which meant that as they paid for tuition, they got all their textbooks and they got all of their learning materials. And we had set that up to go live in the fall of 2019. And the technology was there to do this with our bookstore. We had negotiated an average cost and an average price per unit. And, we and still, you find yourselves as a technology leader falling into the deep rabbit holes of technology. We had focused so much on making sure that technology was ready that we really kind of ignored part of the cycle, which was the faculty weren't quite ready for this. To do this um, project, we needed them to identify their source materials about 2 months earlier than they already were scheduled to. So, if you're teaching in the fall, you typically need to know what your source materials are by March prior to the fall. So we could set up the distribution and the logistics and the all that stuff. We were asking them to move that from March to end of January, and we sprung it on them like with 6 weeks before the end of January, back in 2018, and or yeah, oh no, earlier 2019, and we couldn't get all the adoptions. So we had the technology set up, we had the vendor set up. We were even ready to release the information to the students on how this would affect their registration process, but the faculty dug in, and some of them just really couldn't select course materials that fast. And so um, I'm not going to say the project failed because we're doing it for this fall,
Right.
because but it got delayed. And to me personally, and to my staff, initially we thought, oh, you faculty, you screwed up our project. When I realized, no, we just didn't involve them early enough. We just did not get their, we told them about the project and they bought in on the concept, but we didn't give them enough detail and enough warning and enough support in an area that's outside of technology. We did not know that sometimes they'll sit down with a publisher and change the nature of a textbook because that's the nature of their course, and the publisher will run a 300 or 400 book run just because it matches the DCCCD. We thought they were just textbooks you pull off a shelf and you ship them out. We did not know that there was that level of interaction between a faculty member, and we should have. That's our business. So to me, that's a failure. And what you learn from it is, how do you adjust the next project? And we've now created an intake process that involves a whole lot more people the moment we know that we're going to be doing something different.
Excellent, excellent. And last question before we say goodbye. How do you continue to learn in order to stay dialed in to your role?
Um, that's it's an individual. I got an insatiable curiosity. Um, I was lucky enough to be influenced as an adult, and I think sometimes influence is lost on the young. Um, you know, when I got influenced to do certain things that really were um, not of my makeup, Westinghouse paid for my education for my undergraduate, and if they wouldn't have done it, I would never have gone back. So I did not have the maturity at that point in my life to know that this was going to be good for me. So I challenge myself all the time only because I can remember being challenged. And it was, when I was 26, 27 years old. If I was challenged at 18 and somebody told me all this stuff at 18, they might have. I don't remember. I had other things on my mind, and that's my immaturity, but it's not everybody's immaturity. So I just, the challenge is there. Somebody's doing something different. It's like, hey, look, a chicken, and I'll look at that chicken wherever he goes, see what he's doing, just to see if I can learn something from it. But that's all personal. I don't challenge that. I don't challenge everybody with that mentality. It's just has to be figured out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Tim. I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank everybody for tuning in, and whoever looks at this later or not.